Dr. Powell, we often have prospective students come who are considering going on to do further academic work, doctoral work. Maybe they want to be a professor at some point in their life. Which degree would you recommend for somebody wanting to pursue doctoral work, or even beyond which degree, what path might you recommend?
All right, so I think there's two major paths here. One is to do an MA in your area of specialty, and we have students here who do an MA and who go on to do quite well in further academic work. They're accepted to well-known research universities. Another option, though, is to do the MDiv, and even with the MDiv, you have several things you can do. There are electives in the MDiv, and if you want, you might want to use part of those elective hours to do a thesis or a guided research paper. I think that would even further prepare you for further work, but that's not really required in the MDiv, and you can do an MDiv without a guided research paper or a thesis and still be an attractive candidate. In fact, some schools even prefer the MDiv for those who are doing a PhD. So what I recommend for students is just to think about the area you're interested in further study. Talk to our professor here that's an expert in that area, let's say Old Testament, New Testament, Christian theology, church history. Talk to one of the professors here, and and I think it is better to talk sooner than later. This is something you're interested in. How can you help prepare for that? And then just let them coach you for their field, really different paths you may have to reach the goals that you would like to reach.
Is there a rule of thumb when you think about MA versus MDiv? Is there a rule of thumb about what kinds of schools prefer one over the other when you're looking at the doctoral programs?
Yeah, some schools that have a seminary associated with them, and you have to think here. So, like Baylor is a Baptist school, Emory or Duke or SMU are Methodist schools, Princeton is a Presbyterian school. Those types of schools that have a seminary associated with them tend to like an MDiv. Other schools that don't have a seminary associated with them tend to prefer an MA. And even sometimes we'll have students, I know in my area in theology and church history, let's say if I'm interested in doing something in church history, but I'm in a history program in a state university versus a program at a school like, let's say, Baylor that has a seminary, and I'm doing a degree in religion and in church history. Well, the state schools going into a history program tend to prefer the MA. The schools with the religious background, and you're doing study in a religious studies department, they prefer the MDiv. And so that's one thing to keep in mind, even though that's not a hard and fast rule. We have students here with an MA who will get into a school like, let's say, Baylor, that's associated with, that has a seminary on campus, and still they can get in with an MA.
A lot of schools that have seminary or School of Theology in the name do view themselves as ministry training schools, even though you're doing a PhD in church history. And so they like the MDiv because it says you're helping live up to their ministry training goals. So I think that's a part of that as well. Talk to me for a minute about a writing sample. A lot of schools are going to want a writing sample. How can HST help somebody prepare a writing sample or prepare themselves to be a strong candidate for a doctoral program?
Most doctoral programs, they're looking at things like your grades, your recommendations, standardized test scores. But a key thing is the writing sample. And so with the research papers that we write in any given class, one of those research papers could be turned into a writing sample. Sometimes I have students who, when they do a guided research paper or a thesis, that's going to be a longer project. But the good thing about that is you put a lot of focus into that project, more so than you would just a regular research paper. And so many times a student can take that research, they can boil down the key parts of that research into a shorter paper, let's say a 25-page paper, that then could be a writing sample for doctoral applications that oftentimes might be stronger than just a research paper from one class. Another thing about a paper like that is you could publish it in an academic journal. You might be able to present it at an academic conference, and again, that just further strengthens your application to doctoral programs.
What are some of the considerations beyond getting into a PhD program that might inform whether you pursue the MA or the MDiv?
So one thing I always encourage students to think about with the Masters of Divinity, it really prepares you in broad ways to teach a number of classes, even outside of your area of concentration. For most students who teach at undergraduate institutions, you'll be teaching some classes in your area of concentration. You'll teach classes outside of that area of concentration, and so the MDiv really prepares you for that. I had a colleague once who told me for their job searches that, and this was in an undergraduate context, he said a PhD is preferred, but an MDiv is required. And what he meant by that is they really prefer to have, I mean, it's nice to have people with a PhD, but they really need people, at least with an MDiv, because an MDiv prepares you to teach more broadly, in addition to teaching in an area of specialization.
What resources does Harding School of Theology have to support the research of our faculty and students?
Well, one of the real strengths of this school is our library. It really is an outstanding theological library. It's a gift here in the city of Memphis, and it's the top academic library, theological library in Churches of Christ. We have students who come from all kinds of schools who find themselves in Memphis who will come to our library, and they're trying to finish up their doctoral work, their research, their dissertation, and they think they're going to have to have a lot of interlibrary loans to support their research. They come and find our library and realize they don't need that because we really have the resources they need. We have professors from other schools throughout the city who set up office in our library, and in a couple instances literally set up office in our library, because this is the place in the Mid-South to be for theological research. So we don't have a small library where we're dependent on others to support the research that we do. We have an outstanding library here. And one thing, Matt, that's important about that as well is for our alumni, when they leave this place, they still have access to those resources. And that's something that's important for your work while you're a student here, but also that will continue for the rest of your life.
Having a great library here on campus is fantastic, but what about for those students who aren't local, those who live across the country or even around the world?
Right. So we have an outstanding library staff and some great student workers as well. And one thing I learned when I first came here is just how helpful our library staff are. We can send books to you if you're around the country, that's fine. We can scan articles and send those to you. The library also has access to online resources. Now, these aren't the same things you would find on Google or on the internet. These are resources that are academic resources that the library pays for, that you would have access to, and it allows you to have PDF scans of academic articles. And so in either the books that they will mail to you, the chapters or the articles that they will scan, and then the online resources we have, we really are able to support our distant students well.
What are you hearing from our alumni who have gone on to doctoral work about the preparation that they received at Harding School of Theology?
So some of our graduates have gone on to do doctoral work in some of the best universities in this country and in the world. And I've consistently heard from our graduates that they are well prepared for what's next. Our graduates also go on after they complete doctoral programs to teach in a number of schools associated with Churches of Christ and beyond. And so I hear consistently positive feedback from our students. They are well prepared for what's next, and they do very well after they leave HST.
The primary mission of HST is to equip people for ministry. A side effect of doing that really well is that we also equip people very well to go on and do further academic work. So if you're thinking about going on to a PhD, I would love to visit with you. Dr. Powell, one of our other professors, would love to visit with you and see how we can help you get where God's taking you. God bless you. Bye-bye.